listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin. To master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Once you walked in a forest of splendor in which everything you did and everything you thought was aligned. It is possible at this time to begin to return to the old knowledge. Intuitive healer and manifestor Julia Griffin is here to talk about this unique time in history when all sentient beings, animals, plants, trees, and the earth are intent on creating this change. The wolves awakened her to the most incredible light, which opened gifts and brought knowledge that she longs to share. You are creators, and you are born to be creators of beauty, possibility, and joy. Join Julia on a journey into a beautiful and magical world where amazing possibilities exist. Let us help open the door. The Power of Inspiration and Awakening with Julia Griffin starts right now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin, and you're listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening on Transformation Talk Radio. Welcome. I'm so happy to have you here today. Stay with us for the next hour and let us help you experience a higher vibration and a new state of mind. Today's guest is Jill Mattson. We're going to talk about the connection that music makes to gods and angels and how sound can lift us to a higher frequency. But first, let me tell you about Jill. She's been a prolific musician, composer, author, and intuitive for 3 decades. She feels her most important contributions result from the combination of these skills. A professionally trained musician, Jill is a widely recognized expert and composer in the field of sound healing. She's produced 14 CDs with intriguing magical tracks using ancient and modern techniques and special healing frequencies. Many listeners claim they can achieve life-changing benefits. Jill's a five-time author. Her books and musical compositions have won numerous internationally recognized awards. She's been featured in hundreds of workshops, teleseminars, radio shows, and magazines. She offers an online sound healing school, and she's constantly searching for new ways of approaching health and everyday issues. Finally, Mattson has long been a dedicated student to the study of ancient civilizations, particularly those with the use of sound and music. The knowledge that she has uncovered from these ancient masters is deeply integrated into her music, and her writings often produce profound results, benefiting, enlightening, and uplifting all of us. So thank you for that, Jill, just for putting your life on that line of energy. Now, I know you're a really accomplished musician. Tell us how it began and how you developed your work into sort of a combination of New Age and ancient music.
Well, I've been a musician since knee-high to a grasshopper. And music always made me feel and made me come alive, made me feel special, personal. It was my crutch for getting through difficult situations. And then I'd say in my midlife, a little bit of a crisis. I had been a very traditional Christian, and I was writing an autobiography of God. And I wanted to see how it looked from God's perspective. And what happened was, going through the Old Testament, God was kind of gnarly and, moody, and it wasn't always nice. And I had like maybe a life-changing epiphany. For me, God's love. And I'm not settling for any moody, angry, small-minded God.
A vengeful God. That's what it says in the Old Testament. I am a vengeful God.
Yeah, and he did some not nice things. So when I shifted to the writer and thought of God as love, I started looking first at the Babylonian Bible or other versions of the Bible, quickly getting into the Kabbalith and the great Sumerian mysteries. And as I'm searching for, God of greater and greater love and different ideas of what is love, what is the highest vibe, what is the biggest frequency. I would go through text after text, and I'm an incredible geek, and I read very fast and retain, and I read a lot.
Me too.
But these texts would talk about music for crop growing, for making their enemies sick, for ensuring the king's safety, for getting communities to work together, for rehabilitation, for helping your spleen. I mean, it was just so off the wall. And, I spent a lifetime reading all the mystery schools and ancient things all over the globe. And there was a prevalent idea that people could misuse sound, and sound was perceived as the most powerful. So it was the most hidden, because they were afraid of people like Adolf Hitler seeking out these secrets for some dark agenda. So even though it was greatly held close to the chest, I mean, the Pythagoreans were killed, for example, for a little blab. So they all had skulls. And kind of like, you go to the movies and you look at the trailer. And if the trailer is really good, you go to the movies. So each school would like dangle out a secret or two. Kind of like, I don't know, a rooster crowing or something. Hey, this is good stuff, come to our school, kind of a thing, an advertisement. But when you went all around the world, they were all different. And because I'm psychic, I'm a musician, I'm learned in this ancient wisdom and information, I was able to put together what they're talking about. So like when they talk about magic, they're talking about quantum mechanics. It's not silly, superstitious stuff. They're moving subtle energies, and they're working in other dimensions, things that are too minute today for us to measure. Doesn't mean they don't exist. It means we haven't measured them yet. And so anyway, I think that's how I got into it, is I began to realize that whoever came up with the idea that sound is entertainment, had two horns and a red tail and, pitchfork. That's so cruel when sound makes such incredible modifications in your body, mind, soul, to think that it's just flim-flam sauce. It's a way of controlling the masses.
I tend to think,
and then I began my journey.
Yeah, I tend to think that in all these old texts, there's just enough left to give you a hint here and there, and you have to take it all and then put it together for yourself.
Exactly.
But once you do, it is such a profound system that makes so much sense. And I'm pretty sure if we had another, let's say 10,000 people who were more interested in awakening than accumulating, we would move very, very quickly into a new reality.
I think we're getting there, because you see, sound works exponentially. Like if you go up an octave, you don't double the cycles per second, although you do, but the number of cycles per second goes up exponentially. So let's say you have a low C, and it's lower than I can speak, and you double it. So it's 2 seconds to cycles per second. It doubles to 4. There's your higher C, a difference of 2. Whereas let's say you, my dear, are resonating at 2,000 average cycles per second. If you double your spirituality, your awakening, then you go up to 4,000, but that's a difference of 2,000.
Right.
So the light workers are really carrying a punch, and I don't believe they understand not even what they do, but who they are and how powerful it is and what a difference that makes.
I know, and people say that all the time, and they're not aware they're creating, or I thought this, and then it happened. It's not just happening, you're creating it with your own light.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying about exponentially, and that's wonderful. That's such an encouraging thought.
It is.
Thank
so,
you.
Light and dark don't pack the same punch. Light, it's like you walk into a room and you turn on the light switch. there's no argument or fight. The light wins. It's like that.
Wonderfully said. Now, I think that you've pretty much said that, but I want to be clear to our listeners. One way that you can raise your vibrations is simply by listening to music and sound.
Correct. Correct. You can listen to sound for any specific physical thing. I have music tuning your organs, your spine, muscles, giving you vitamins that are hard to digest, but easy to get through sound. So you can go in on that level. I have music that pulls out negative emotions and adds positive. I also have a host of music that works on spirituality and just bringing light into your aura, opening chakras above your head, enabling higher dimensional energies to shift in, to connect with God, to connect with angels, to raise your divinity in many, many creative ways.
And I do want to add, you also have the songs of flowers and stars, which I personally adore.
Thank you. The flower idea I got from the ancient Greeks. They approached healing from emotions. So they wouldn't give you medicine, but if you had an ulcer, they would stop your worrying to address the physical issue. And they were so clever. They had this idea, which kind of relates to getting divine energy, but the golden mean or phi, they would use in music, and it's simply two notes that think of them as like maybe hitting together and creating cancellation.
Mm-hmm.
And when you cancel everything, even in a little tiny ball of sound, you cancel not only the sound waves, but you cancel all the waves.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates a little bit of a vacuum. And my belief is that in this sacred space, a little tiny bit of more complete divine energy enters your realms. So the Greeks were using pi or phi in various places so that it would like cancel waves. And when you hear it, this combination of energy that cancels waves, it's going to cancel waves in different part of your body. So they were calculating the effects of waves, the angles of waves, to clear mental health issues, to clear physical issues, to clear emotional issues. Fabulous. Just
it
fabulous.
Sounds as though they were creating a place of stillness where higher vibrations could come in and fill that up, almost like creating a quiet void.
Absolutely. So stillness, meditation, even the space in between your in and out breath, just think of them as tiny little portals. Kind of funny that we all wonder, oh, where's heaven? Well, heaven's all around us if you say heaven's a higher dimension, but it's little tiny portals. And what we resonate with, what we think about, what we choose, what we feel, what our habits are, that dictates what kind of energy we ingest and who we become. And that's why the music is so powerful, because it's pretty, like a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. It's easy to listen to, and it's just constantly pouring in higher dimensional energies. And after a while, it becomes a habit.
Like all of it, like meditating every day.
Absolutely.
If you do it every day for a month or two, you can't live without it, but forget it for a while and it's a struggle to come back. So I think you've told us that by using these ancient things that you've learned and putting those in your music, that's a way of connecting to the divine, but so are the stars and the flowers and the trees.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The ancient idea was that God is all that is. So they had in the Jewish tradition, the Hindu, the Egyptians, the Druids, and many, many more, they would have like names of God. And you almost don't even want to think about the words names of God. It's all that is. God starts out as one energy, and perhaps he's bored. But he separates and he sees himself and experiences himself, and then he separates again. So think of light going through a crystal and breaking out into a rainbow. So that very first breakdown would be called the names of God. It's this high energy of God. It's found in the Jewish tree of life, which is,
Right.
I believe, taken from the Egyptians because they had it first. So they showed that their pantheon was all their gods and goddesses were attributes of all that is, or let's say God's love. Then the names of God, or we're talking about the Sephiroth and the tree of life, they would be, merciful love, kind love, true love, tough love.
Yeah. I was thinking harsh love. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all in there. And and so they would listen over, and even today, like in the Hindu tradition, I follow Sri Swamiji Ganapathy, and the most important thing he says is names of God for power, for protection, for upliftment, for advancement, for evolution, for health. And it's an ancient, forgotten tradition, but it's incredibly powerful.
Or just like the Hindu chants that people use now for prosperity or love or whatever they are. Should probably go back to that. I haven't done it in a while, but it's interesting. I think, what is it, 52 days of practice or 104 days, and that's the repetition. But somewhere in there, you stop thinking about what you're trying to do with it, and the sounds start changing you.
They
If you're
do.
chanting. Yeah.
And it also gets away from what the words mean. So they're looking sound as a tool, not as the symbolism for words. So if you look at cymatics, for example, you make a certain sound, it creates an image in the sand or something. So that image is now the written word for that sound. So in today's languages, they're symbolic, but the ancient languages, Hebrew, Tibetan, Chinese, Egyptian, and so forth, these ancient Sanskrit, these ancient languages, they were considered almost like the name of God. The letters were like the building blocks. And so when you listen to them, you're listening to perfect sounds that make up all that is, once again. And
let's take a second and listen to some of your sounds. Would that be okay?
That would be great. Let me just explain for 2 seconds. Okay, we're going to listen to one in the Hebrew tradition. Again, their letters are considered the basic building blocks of God's creation. And I, through a vision and all my life's experience, I was able to reconstruct ancient ciphers of taking the Hebrew names, the 72 names of God, and putting them into 4 tones, like bum, 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 something like that. And then in this music, and it's not really music, more like tones, think of a wind chime. The 72 names of God were also considered 72 names of angels. They would add an EL or an EL or an IEL to the end. So Micah would be a name of God, but Michael would be the angel. And they're all full of correspondences. So the ancient Hebrews would say, Michael, for example, blue, and then give you stones and flowers and colors and smells and all these other things that link. So I did the names of God. I got someone to teach me in old Arabic pronunciation, which wasn't very clear. They kind of speak in a little bit of a muffled tone, but I wanted the oldest sound I could get. And then in the background, I have the tones, which would be like beeping this God, and they're all there. These are all consciousness. I channel, and they're all there. But anyway, so it connects you to the attribute of God, to the angel, and then to amplify the connection, because this is the idea with their way of managing quantum energies, is to simply make it strong enough to manifest. There's frequencies of smells, colors, all the other things associated, stones. They all have frequencies, and they're just playing lightly in the background to make your connection with that particular name or particular attribute of God, particular part of God, an angel, more powerful. Very lightning.
So just for these few minutes or a minute or so that we're listening to those, we're receiving all those things. And so if a person wanted to really have a strong effect, I think the entire CD is how long?
It's close to an hour.
So you could listen to that for an hour.
Mm-hmm. And it
If
would
you
be really
really-
good to, the thing with sound is you don't have to have it loud. And when you pay attention to it, you ingest it at a faster rate. But let's say you are working, but if you play it twice, low volume, it doesn't have to be loud, you're getting quite a dosage. And
Right.
you can do it while you're doing something else.
I do that all the time. One time I listened to one of my classes by mistake. I couldn't even really hear it. And I thought, I feel so much better. And then I thought, oh, it was my class. And that was so fascinating to me that, I mean, yes, I could hear it if I stopped everything and really listened, but I didn't have a memory of listening to it.
Right.
Isn't it
Sounds
amazing?
invasive, so it will find you even when you're asleep.
Also, people could listen to this while they're sleeping.
Oh, that would be really good. Loop it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll hear the music for just a moment, and then we'll go a little deeper because I have a lot of questions. Okay, so the first thing I thought is that when you study the Kabbalah and the planets, and I know you say they're astrological references. So like if we went to the planet Venus, that the color green is associated with it. Leopard skin, peacock feathers, copper, all those things, love, relationships, to some degree, abundance. Those are all associations or affinities of the planet of Venus. So how does that reflect or play out with the names that you're using?
You mean the names of God or what name?
The names of God, because I know you said they had
Well,
planetary
I would say
attributes.
that, how to put this? In the ancient world, my belief is that they're often working with the fifth dimension. I suspect what we call dark energy, dark matter. And it's a more subtle, more fine, it's an energy field that's much more complete. Whereas in the third dimension or world or duality, we have great variety where you have this and not that. But health on any level in your body, mind, emotion, connection to God is a total balance, equal amount of all. And you can look into the voice and look at everybody's frequencies with scientific software. I've never met anybody who's had a balanced voice. I certainly don't. So anyway.
Is that because of duality constantly hitting us?
I believe, and I also think that we're born with a personality and, we're born with different emotions and attributes, and we're working to master them in matter. So our deficits, they're kind of a positive and a negative. So we can have drive, but we have to learn not to drive over others.
Perfectly said.
Yeah,
I know.
everybody's.
People will always tell me things like, I feel calm when I'm around you. And I'm like, I am so emotional. That is so funny to me. Of course, I work on the calm. And I guess at this point, I emanate it. But it's not how I feel inside. So that's a perfect example. I'll just go like, okay, so that's your angry emotion. We know blue-green light helps with that. So let's think about this and then come back to it.
Correct.
And the waves will settle.
Another thing I have is that I have in my Stardust music, I have the frequencies of the planets, and that's physics from their rotations and their orbits. And of course, all the associations, but I just coming out with brand new off the press, Seasons in the Sky, with the zodiac tones. The ancient Sumerians would assign tones. The ancient idea of astrology wasn't tabletop gossip or predictions. It was healing and choices and decisions. So if you could use the stars almost like a calendar to predict different types of energy that were going to come in and different types of influences that would enable you to make much more powerful decisions based on the energy of what's coming, because that's predictive. And it also resonates like with your spine. The tones resonate and kind of tune your spine. Think of your spine as a circuit breaker, so when one vertebrae goes out, then maybe your spleen goes out because they're connected. And if you tune the vertebrae, the spleen then comes into harmony. It's beautiful. If you pop that vertebrae in, the spleen is still damaged. So your body's a big sound machine. Anyway, I just came out with the zodiac stars, and then the ancient Sumerians, they were so sophisticated in some ways. They would imagine the zodiac tones coming in and resonating with planets, and of course they would. And so they would be amplified by a certain planet. They called them ruling planets. So I mean, like I have the ruling planets in the music. The idea with listening to the zodiac sounds and correspondences is we're all different. So
I'm sure.
I'm always, I'm kind of like a blue indigo color, and I'm always attracted to orange people, if you will. So by listening to this music, I got all the key signatures, which you rarely hear on any type of music. And then I got all the planetary tones and all the linking tones. It's kind of like giving your body a smorgasbord for healing, balancing. And then you can even go in and, like I offers a voice analysis, or people can do it on their own. You can chart your missing tones and then just listen to that segment and just kind of feel your life kind of
lifting up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you become more of that balanced whole light.
Yeah, I wanted to say, because I do study astrology, I think it's most interesting in like knowing what the energies are that we get every month, because it's different for everybody according to what your chart is there and what is not there. But you can, when you see something that you think of as bad, or maybe not the positive zone that you wanted to experience, you can visualize that you're receiving the energy, or you can listen to Jill's songs and bring in the energy that you need to overcome that, just the same way that we can with our voice.
And it in a way, astrology asks for a step of belief, but you can get off of NASA and satellites. You can buy the frequencies coming in per day that are below our hearing range.
Wow.
So yeah, you can just buy them, and satellites record them. They'll raise them up so you could hear them. But that also tell you, people who have colds are going to have a bad day today. And if you don't have a cold, you don't notice. But there is confirmation that the stars bring in frequencies all the time. So like, let's say I'm out of balance because I have way too much chi. We have a great day and a lot of G comes in, and I'm struggling, but you are orange and you love G because that balances you. So you have a good day. I don't. But when you listen to, how to put this, we tend to let negativity trigger us, and we can either let it trigger us, or we can let the negativity find anything left over and release it. So when you get into a state of calm and acceptance and, release, and get into that beautiful still point, then when that negativity comes, it's kind of like water off a duck's back.
Well, it's not interested in you because there's not a place for it to go into.
Correct. And that's what I'm doing with my astrology music. I'm taking people to that state.
Well, that's incredible. Well, we're up to break, and I can't wait to come back and talk about more of this. So I've been talking with Jill Mattson. I'm Julia Griffin at OneTrueSelf.com, ONE. She's an incredible musician and composer, and she's going to tell us more about the names of God and moving into our divinity at this time through music. And you can find Jill's website at Jill's, Jills, wingsoflight.com. And we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm Julia Griffin at OneTrueSelf.com, ONE, TrueSelf.com. And I'm talking with Jill Mattson about sounds that connect us with angels, gods, higher vibrations, and health. And so far, it's been an absolutely fascinating talk. So stay with us and find out more. Okay, so Jill, when we were talking before, you said something that was so good, which is that if we have the right vibrations, when the more negative ones come through, they just simply can't affect us. And you said that we can alter that with music and meditation and quiet time. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Think of the quantum physics or higher dimensions, whatever words you want to conjure up, as not having the rules our dimension does. So in the 3D, we have cause and effect. We have a timeline. We have counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have all this logical left brain stuff going on. But when you look into the quantum realms, time's not there and things are not so sequential, but they resonate. So the operating rule is as above, so below, or like attracts like. You sow what you reap. It goes around, comes around. And so what we feel, think, and act is what we attract,
right?
What we become.
So I'm going to give a few examples with this. When I was working at a library and my children were small, I realized that the people that were coming in, I had past lives with, and they would come up very vividly. And at first I thought, oh my gosh, I've been gone for probably an hour, but they didn't even notice I had been gone. That's an example of how time changes. Another thing that I read recently, a few months ago, is someone said, once you awaken, you shouldn't expect things to happen in the same way.
Yeah.
There should be that expectation of speeded events, of times when time goes very slowly or so much happens instantaneously, or there's more synchronicity, or you start to have a feeling of where your inner body and inner self want to take you.
Right. So music makes you go to your heart. Music makes you feel. Music enables you to lose negativity and those type of connections. In these ancient civilizations had sound codes, music methods to connect to very higher dimensional beings, even systems of stars. So like your ancient languages, think about ancient Hebrew, let's say ancient Egyptian, the sounds, not what they mean, the sounds create a vibratory makeup. Think of like a net that a ball bounces out of. It creates a pattern. And when we speak that language, we resonate with that pattern. So the ancient languages of light were drawing its speakers to these other evolved beings through resonance. And we think of resonance as like a violin here and a violin there, but the ancients would think of resonance like this planet, that planet. And some recent science findings, the 101st monkey effect. So there you have a monkey who learns a new trick on an island. If enough, like I think it's 0.2% of the population, small amount of the population understands that new trick, they all get it, even if they're 1,000-mile away. Well, how's that work? Resonance, because the skeleton of the monkey, the skin, the fur, it creates a vibrational pattern. And guess what? It resonates with its own species. And likewise, resonating with planets, resonating with evolved beings, much more so than us. All these things were techniques that they used to fill up full of health and light and happiness and release their sorrows and just enjoy, I guess.
It sounds like a replacement plan for old negative patterns with higher ones.
Yeah.
Which is part of the awakening that we're going through right now, is how do you replace your older patterns with newer ones?
Yeah. And what does sound do? You listen to a music track and it's another web.
Mm-hmm.
And we're full of webs of sound, and we're just going in there and tuning and adding and healing.
It's really amazing what you're doing right now. For people who've worked with it, what are some of the changes that you've seen in them?
Well, I had one lady, She was listening to my Deep Way Beauty CD. She was going to a high school reunion and tightened her skin, muscles, and vitamins. So she was listening a lot. And yes, indeed, it made her look younger. And when I say a lot, she put it on low volume, 24 hours a day for 7 days. But she had had knee surgery and was planning on going in a walker. And she walked. And that's because I had put in the muscles of the face and the neck, but they're holographic, they're octaves of the whole body.
Right.
So the 7 days of listening fixed the muscles in her knees and she walked.
So all these things that I think people are thinking of as being theorized as new age or old energy, ancient energy, they're things that really work, and they're certainly worth a try for all of you who want to grow or awaken more easily, particularly while we're going through this thing of moving through 3, 4, and 5D.
And sound is used in the medical. I mean, there's, you can see your baby with sound. They'll blast kidney stones with sound, TENS or sound. It's not called sound healing, but sound packs a punch. It's just that we need to know how to use it.
And I think, too, the intellectual parts that you're adding to this make it so much more fascinating. Because then your mind expands while you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so one thing that's interesting to me, we were talking about this during the break. So the Sumerians had a different astrology from ours. Will you tell us how they did that?
Yes. My understanding is that like Aries, Taurus, the groupings and the names were coined by the Ptolemies. They would be the Greeks in charge of ancient Egypt right before its demise. So the early years, think more of the tales of Gilgamesh. And in that, or the 12 labors of Hercules, notice there's 12 astrological signs. Like, let's take Hercules. It's just a little bit more familiar, though the Sumerians would have used Gilgamesh. So he has a journey and he has to overcome something. So think of Aries as maybe, you're learning all new adventures and you have to overcome being scattered, maybe get a little grounded. So,
or like the Fool card in the Tarot.
Right. And so there's a lesson in each one of those tarot. There's a lesson in the astrology, and there's a lesson in each one of these tales. And so they were kind of like describing the night sky as different tones, as a different layer of all that is, as a different frequency of God. And our music today mainly gives you 3 key signatures or concentration on 3 notes. It gives you all 12 in the night sky. And perhaps we reincarnate so that we come with a concentration of each tone and we know how to master them. But they would point more in the Sumerian to the stars. Now it would still go around the night sky in a oval like the zone, like today. But it was more star-centered, and it was more, archetype, meaning this is the lesson, the learning. So when you learn this lesson, you get transformed and you become this attribute, this virtue, this skill, this talent, this beauty. Right. And they used it also, they would use it for predicting, to make decisions, but they also used it for healing. So like the elemental energies in the Chinese, it's the same kind of thing. You could put them on a color wheel, or you could put the elemental energies dividing up nature into different categories. You could put them on a circular piano keyboard, and you can put the zodiac on a circular piano keyboard. And if you do that, the note or the sign or the stars right across the sky, they cancel each other out like a seesaw. And so, C and F sharp, they create phi, they create that vortex. If you have too much, let's say these are red and green. If you have too much red, if you add green, you kind of lower the red. So you can kind of use these 2 tools for balancing. And the ancient Sumerians used astrology for more purposes than prediction, healing, for example. And that's what I do with my Seasons of the Stars, this new CD I just released. I offer like a voice analysis, which corresponds to your astrology chart, but it's more sciencey. It's looking absolutely at the frequencies in your body and putting them on like a little voice bar graph. And you're healthy if they're all average, but most people look like a cityscape. And you can just use the different tones, the different frequencies from the stars, if you wish, the different names of God. There's all different ways of taking tones and balancing them and coming into harmony, wholeness.
And what you're saying is so important, because right now we're in so much polarity that if you don't make a concerted effort to balance and stay in your heart, that's the whole day is up and down.
Ultimately, too out of balance results in health issues. If you maintain it for it's like, let's say, for example, you're out of balance because you worry too much. Keep it up and you're going to have an ulcer.
Right. And that's how Chinese medicine works as well.
Yes.
What is it? Anger is the liver, grief is the lungs, too much joy is the heart, and so on.
Yeah. And I even have a CD on that where I go in and I do the ancient Chinese. They had a method of balancing the tones in the organs, and science, you measure them again. So I had the tones of science, and I got software to create the harmonics. And so you go in with the ancient techniques and you go through your body and tune all your organs. And the music is in the key signature of the organ. And you'll find that it relates to a feeling. So now I've done this deep wave body healing CD so many times. I know what my spleen feels like. So let's say I start to feel a cold coming on, just because I've repeated and listened to the CD a lot. I'll go into my spleen. I know what motions are stored there. Maybe I'll just sit down and think of the opposite to balance. I'll think of the music. I'll remember the music. I'll feel it. And I just tune myself up on the fly.
Quick fix. It's so fascinating to me because, first of all, it's quite an achievement just to understand all the things that you understand. But you're making music to put all your understanding into, which is really quite incredible.
It's my joy. I'm lucky, I guess.
But I was going to ask, how did you move from being a formal musician to what you're doing?
I had illness, and I was always in orchestras. And because of the illness, I was unable to play. It was a muscle disorder, and it went into remission. So when you're in an orchestra, you can practice for 8 hours. Not me anymore. So I started cheating to get back into it, if you will. And I was doing just bluegrass and then jazz. And then I did some gospel. And then I learned, people would promise me music and we go to a concert and they'd say, oops. So I started learning to play by ear. And then I started creating. And I must have lived as a classical composer because I already knew how to do symphony. I could just do it. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, it just kind of like slowly transferred. And this is while I'm learning all about these ancient people. And then I befriended Sherry Edwards, who has this science of the voice and looking at every frequency in the body and modulating it. I don't know. It was given to me.
When you were ready for it, it just started to come in.
Right.
I understand. Because I think I awakened with about 8 books, and it was before there was anything on the internet. But it was all I had, so it had to work, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that's sort of a funny thing about it. So do we need to know, when we're listening to the names of God and the angels, do we need to know what the attributes are, or to study it, or just to listen? Or could we do both?
You can do both. You can, on the CD, you have the correspondences. So you can even use them purposely, like this particular angel helps with literary skills. This particular angel helps with grief. So the angels, the Hebrew 72 angels, all have purposes and links. And I have a class on that, on my masterclass series, teaching you how to access that, but you can use them purposely or turn off your left brain and just ingest. And I would say that any particular one that feels good is your body releasing energy because you're already connected to that person. It might even be a way to figure out who's working with you.
And so you have an online class that people can purchase if they want to go into more detail with this?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so how did you learn the Hebrew names? Did you have to study to do that and pronounce them?
I found them in antiquity. I think many people have access to them, but what I was able to bring forth was a method in a ciphers, to take the Hebrew letters into tones.
Right. Which I think they originally had anyway, didn't they?
Yes, they were. Yes,
yeah, that's what I thought. I remembered that. Because they all had an attribute, they had a meaning, they had a number, and they had a note.
That's correct.
Yeah, and then if you took those things, you could do it in a way that the energy comes together in another way, like one letter plus another letter, and then that is a different message.
Correct. And also another way of thinking about it is you're an empty vessel. So you listened, and maybe one time you get a drop of this angel. You listen another time, you get another drop. You listen to the tone, you get a drop. You look at the name, you get a drop. You look at the correspondent, you get a drop. And ultimately, you fill up with divine essence. So
it's like it is with all spiritual study, repetition plays a part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for people who wanted like the quick track with this, they should probably play it several hours a day and take your course if they'd want to jump all the way in.
Yes. And on different levels, I have a class in Egypt in which I'm working with the Sephiroth. Now that one is the tree of life, is the different attributes of God. Think of it as a musical scale, and I have them in sound. In my class, Way of the Wizard, the Druids did the same thing. The runes, much like the Hebrew letters, were the building blocks of creation. So they were used for manifesting. And, so I have a class on that and using the runes for the blessings of that civilization.
Because that was a tree language. The runes were with the Druids.
Oh yeah, it's great. The Druid stuff is wonderful. Because it's hard to get a hold of because they didn't write much down, but I think
that's what I thought. The only thing I've really been able to find has just been every now and then I'll find like 15 or 20 pages that tells me a lot, and then it's gone again.
Yeah. And I think the only reason I was able to put more backbone to that was because I studied all the others. And you might think they're all different. They're not. Their understandings, particularly about sound, they're all the same. They knew. So the Druids, the Chinese, the Tibetans, all these American Indians, they all were on the same playing field using the same information.
Because there's one truth. It's just expressed in different ways with different cultures.
Right.
And I think I could be wrong, but I think the tree language was so that other people couldn't interpret what they were saying or doing. It was like a hidden secret language. Right.
And they would definitely, they had different ways. Remember, we talked before about the different attributes of God.
Right.
The smell, the fragrance, the letter, the sound, the tone, the number. So with something like the trees, it's a group consciousness. It's a group pattern. Think of the branching in the above and below. And so the trees, like the 101th monkey, the trees are going to resonate with the other trees. So they're going to communicate on various levels. And so there's going to be a tree world, or a tree consciousness, I should say. And the more you emulate the tree, the more you feel it, touch it, imagine it, pretend you're a tree, the more you start to copy its vibrational pattern. And once you do that, that's when that resonance happens and you access their consciousness.
Oh, that's amazing, Jill.
they were doing that with portholes in nature for the fairies, for all these things that have been deemed superstitious. Maybe it's just that humans are a little egotistical. We like to think, hey, it's just us. I don't think
know.
it's just us.
Yeah, it would be really nice to have some of those fourth and fifth dimensional beings come back in and help us.
Well, they can, but my understanding is that they have done so in the past. And then we have been obedient while they're here. So let's say we get brownie points, karma points, gifts, if you will, green stamps. Okay, but you only get this much for being obedient. Whereas if you come up with it on your own and master it, you get the whole book of green stamps.
Right.
So if they're going to bless us, which I believe they're working on, it's more like charades. They're helping us to uncover what they have shown us in eons past, so that we are the masters.
And someone they can really talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are some wonderful thoughts. So what do you have on fairies? I'm just curious since we're here.
Well, I've done workshops on fairies. And again, if I go into the woods, and probably you too, I'm sure, probably half the listeners, if you go into the woods, sometimes you feel really good at certain spots.
Right.
Often underneath a beautiful tree, or often in a little spot. And if you take a photograph, another way to find a fairy entrance is it'll have little dots of light and squiggles. So you don't see it with your eyes, but if you use old-fashioned film, often you can document it. And these would be places that they would call portholes. And they would go to the portals and, meditate, and again, try to emulate the frequencies and the feelings. And I from the readings, I don't know that humans have always been admirable, and I don't know that we're always welcomed. So, and I think in my Way of the Wizard course, I have a lot of this, but they have advice for the Druids on what to do, what to not to do, how to be accepted, how to be kind, how to be loving, and how to be assumed that way. So the Druids had tons of great stuff. Yeah.
That is so fascinating. I think that you have done so much work on this. I'm so impressed. Would you say start with the names of God if people want to begin learning this and changing, or does it just depend on who you are and what you want?
I would say whatever trips your trigger. It's kind of like you're a pillar, and you look more like a skyscraper with just little window holes, so you can get light in from any direction, but usually the best direction for you feels good. Yeah,
I say that when I teach class. You only need to practice the exercises that really appeal to you in the beginning.
Yes,
because they're not just appealing, they're speaking.
Correct.
Yeah. And so that's a good place people can start with intuition, is just to go to your website and tell our listeners what your website is, please.
JillsWingsOfLight.com. And we were going to talk about echoes of God. Remember the God gene?
Oh, yes. Let's do that.
Okay. Well, another way of approaching using sound and music to the divine comes from the geneticist Dean Hammer, who identified a gene, VMAT2, which has been dubbed the God gene. It's simply a gene that we would all have, but some people have in great predominance. And the people that have it in great predominance are people like the Dalai Lama. So the most evolved, the close to enlightened or enlightened people have this heavy predominance of this particular gene. Well, a gene and its activators and the sound code to support and grow the genes all sound. And that was given to me graciously by Sherry Edwards, because she was able to identify that in sound. So the Echoes of God is just gorgeous music, but it's encoded with the God gene. and all of the activators and the sounds to support the growth of it.
And we're going to play some of that music right before the end of our show, and we're getting there. So I'm going to go ahead and sign us out. And thank you, Jill, for sharing these incredible insights and this information that had just absolutely fascinated me. So let me tell everyone that you can sign up for my newsletter on my website, onetrueself.com. And you can go ahead and develop from some of that information on a spiritual level and find a higher vibration. You can email me, go to my website, you'll find me, and I hope to see you again in a couple weeks. Thank you so much for listening and going up with us with vibration. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin to master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Join us next time as Julia takes us deeper into the memory of the moments of light where transcendence and enlightenment emerge. The memory of the jewel of consciousness is always lived within you to tap into waves of energy and create huge changes by imagining the beauty of the vision and desires that are hidden in the heart. Learn to find your way back to nature, beauty, and your own heart, which holds the secrets of your existence and future. To discover more about Julia's adventures, animal communication, and the teachings she brings to every show, visit onetrueself.com. That's onetrueself.com. That's ONE, trueself.com.